Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the 2020 Promise Zone Federal Convening. We will be getting started here in about 5 minutes. We will get started here in about 5 minutes. We've had some more people join. Again, greetings to the 2020 Promise Zone Federal Convening. In approximately 4 minutes, we will go ahead and get started with this presentation. Greetings again. We've had a number of people join us just in the last minute or so we want to go ahead and welcome you to the 2020 National Promise Zone Coalition Federal Convening. We will get started here right at about 3 minutes. We will be getting started with our presentation in about 3 minutes. Okay, guys, we got about 2 minutes for start time. Looks like numbers have slowed down just a little bit, so we'll go ahead and start about a minute and a half, a little bit early today on our presentation. We are scheduled for 90 minutes for this presentation today. We want to go over some quick house rules. We do request that everyone stays on mute during the presentation. If you have a question, please use the chat format. Type your questions in the chat. We have a moderator that will be watching as well as I for those questions. We will be addressing the presenters with those questions during different points in time during the presentation. So there will be time for Q&A, but we want you to use the chat format to do so. So please, during this presentation, keep your computers on mute as we go through this presentation. Again, please, as you are typing your questions, and feel free to type them at any time. Let me be clear on that. You can type your questions at any time. We are looking at those and we will present those. But if we do not get to your question, please leave an email address with your question so that we can get that directly to the presenters and make sure that your questions are answered. Again, we appreciate you participating with us in our 2020 Promise Zone Federal Convening. With that being said, our moderator is Jake. Jake, I'll leave it up to you to go from here.
Good morning, everyone. Silas, give me a quick confirmation that you're hearing me and seeing me, would you?
I hear you and I see you well.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. I appreciate everyone joining. My name is Jake Akrovic. I work for HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and I am the community liaison to the North Minneapolis Promise Zone up here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And today we're going to be joined by the St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank. And part of the reason that I was really happy to be offered the moderating duties for this session is because here in Minneapolis, we're also fortunate to have a Federal Reserve Bank right in our backyard. And we've been able over the last 4 or 5 years here with the Promise Zone to form some good partnerships with the folks at the Minneapolis Federal Reserve Bank. And I think it's always good to then hear what's going on in other Federal Reserve Bank districts and from partners and stakeholders around the country. So I am pleased to introduce this session, COVID-19 and Promise Zones, Meeting the Needs of Impacted Communities. I have 2 great panelists, presenters today, Faith Weekly and Nilu Panth. They're both community development advisors, again, out of the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. And let me see, I had a couple notes here real quick. I also wanted to mention that there's a afternoon session today that's titled Engaging the Regulatory Agencies to Advance Promise Zone Goals. And so that's kind of in some ways is an extension of this session, similar subject matter. And so we're encouraging folks to join that session as well this afternoon if you can. If you can't, the Sacramento Promise Zone is recording and live streaming these sessions. And so if you can't get to it now, you can always go back to the Sacramento Promise Zone Facebook page and catch the presentation later. And all the presentations from the last couple of weeks have been archived there. So that having been said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Faith Weekly, again, Community Development Advisor from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. I'm going to bring her slides up and let her go ahead and introduce herself. Faith, please take it away.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to present this morning. My name is Faith Weekly, and I'm a Community Development Advisor in the Community Development Function at the St. Louis Fed, based in the Louisville branch. At the St. Louis Fed, community development staff work at the local, regional, and national level to promote the economic resilience and mobility of low, moderate income and underserved individuals and communities. We accomplish our work in many ways, including conducting research and identifying emerging issues, developing resources and sharing ideas, and fostering collaboration and building partnerships. While I'm based in Louisville, I am responsible for covering the entire 8th District, which includes 7 states, parts of Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, Tennessee, Missouri, and Mississippi, and the entire state of Arkansas. The Evansville and St. Louis Promise Zones fall within the 8th District's footprint. As a community development advisor, my areas of focus are neighborhoods and housing. In this role, I work to advance comprehensive community development efforts to revitalize distressed neighborhoods, stabilize LMI communities, and foster partnerships and connections that help neighborhoods thrive. Before I start, I have to give the disclaimer. The views expressed in this presentation are my own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. Next slide, please. So before I start, I also like to encourage you to ask questions during my presentation. Jake, my moderator, will be able to pose those to me various points during the presentation. So the spread of the coronavirus and the many efforts to slow it are impacting communities across the nation. To best respond, information is needed about the scope and scale of challenges in various communities. This report offers findings of a survey designed to collect information on the effects of COVID-19 on communities and people in LMI households and the entities serving them. The Fed is committed to fielding this survey until the end of 2020, and will reassess whether it should be continued at the end of the year. The third fielding of this survey was conducted in August, and the results will be released tomorrow, September 2nd. Next slide, please. Here are some of the key findings of the second survey from June. So 60% of respondents indicated that COVID-19 was having a significant disruption on the economic conditions of the communities they serve. COVID-19 is having a significant disruption on the entities they represent, with 27% expecting to bounce back quickly after recovery begins. 56% indicated that demand for their services has increased since early April or is anticipated to increase, and 45% noted a corresponding decrease or anticipated decrease in their ability to provide services. Nearly 1 out of every 5 respondents indicated their entity could operate for less than 3 months in the current environment before exhibiting financial distress. Next slide, please. In June, 6 out of 10 respondents rated the level of disruption as significant that COVID-19 is having on economic conditions for the people and communities they serve. While I haven't seen the results for the third fielding conducted in August, it will be interesting to see the change in numbers. I believe the lifting of the eviction moratoriums and expiration of federal unemployment benefits will more than likely cause an increase in the rate that is noted here. Next slide, please.
And Faith, real quick, just a note, I'm having some kind of a technical issue here. The chat box keeps disappearing on me, so might have to pause every couple slides just so I can bring that up.
Okay. So at this point in time, what is the top impact of COVID-19 on the people and communities you serve? Income loss, job loss, unemployment, and business impacts were rated as the number 1 and 2 top impacts of COVID-19. When we use the term business impacts means the ability for a small business to continue to operate, access to capital, the ability to pay rent and to make payroll. Next slide, please. So on this slide, it's asked, over the past 8 weeks, how have COVID-19 related impacts changed for the people and communities you see? So the top 3 impacts rated as getting modestly worse were number 3, basic consumer needs, meaning shelter, food, utilities. Number 2 was income loss, job loss, and unemployment. And number 1 was business impacts. From your perspective, how are your communities handling the increased demand for housing assistance and food insecurity? Once again, I'd like to repeat that tomorrow, the third fielding of this survey will be available. Also, I wanted to mention that in August, the Fed conducted a
Hey, Faith, this is Jake real quick. Is everyone else having issues with the video and audio dropping out a little bit here? I'm having some issues on my end. So I was going to say, Faith, I don't know. It sounds like a lot of people are having issues I'm seeing in the chat. So you might just want to pause your video and see if that helps on your end.
Okay.
All right. You want to try speaking real quick?
Okay.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. Is that better?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you anyway. So we'll keep rolling. I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, now I can hear you.
So almost half of the respondents said they expect it will take the people and communities they serve to return to conditions they were experiencing before the impact of COVID-19. I'm sorry, it will take longer than 12 months to return to the conditions they were experiencing before the impact of COVID-19. Remember, this survey was conducted in June. So once again, conditions have deteriorated since June. So it will be interesting to see whether in the survey that will be released tomorrow, if this number has increased. But I know a number of you are community development practitioners and also work for nonprofits. And I was just curious to see, do you feel this is still accurate? Do you feel as though the recovery will take longer than 12 months? Or do you suspect that
I'm having the audio drop out again. Are there folks experiencing the audio dropping out?
I apologize.
That's no worries. That's life in virtual work world. You know, it happens. tell you what, do we think it makes sense right now to move to Nilu's presentation and then come back? Or do you want to try and continue? What are you thinking, folks?
Hey, Jake, this is Silas real quick. Let's move on to Nilu. Faith, maybe a good option would be for you to call in with the phone number, and we'll send you that, and that way we can hear you on your presentation. We can still run the slides. But let's switch to Nilu, Jake. Give us about 2 hot minutes and we'll get right back at it.
All right, Nilu, can everyone see the slides here? All right, well, I can see the slides anyway. Cool. Thank you, folks, in the chat box. And again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. You know, we've all been through this before. And also, again, on my end, the first time I did this, the chat box was popping up just fine. And now when I click to pop it up, it's doing so intermittently. So the, you know, the technology karma just isn't there today, but we're going to keep moving on with Nilu. Nilu, please feel free to introduce yourself and then take it away.
Thank you, Jake. Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank Jake and Silas and everybody leading this conference for giving us the opportunity to present today. Faith, I'm sorry, I was hoping that I would tell the story based on the research, the Main Street research we had, but we'll make it happen. Again, my name is Nilu Pant. I'm a community development advisor at the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. I joined the bank about 2.5 years ago. Before that, for 19 years, I was working in the nonprofit sector, wearing different hats from program management to fund development, but I am really enjoying my role here at the Federal Reserve. So I need to make this disclaimer, just like Faith did. The comments that I shared today are solely those of mine and do not necessarily represent the views of the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis and the Federal Reserve System or the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve. Next slide, Jake. So Faith talked about our community development department, which has a research arm, a policy and analysis arm, and a community engagement arm. And that's very intentional because the work that we do is very research and community informed. So the community engagement team, just like the name suggests, is responsible for going out to within our engaging with community stakeholders, from nonprofit leaders to banking leaders to philanthropic leaders. We do the community scans, as we call it, and understand the barriers and the challenges and the opportunities that are presented within the community development field in low and moderate income communities within our 8th district. And so the community engagement team is a little unique in the St. Louis Fed because we are a cross-functional team between community development and consumer affairs examiners. So we work very closely with the consumer affairs examiners, who are the regulation arm or the supervision arm of the St. Louis Fed. And as we do community scans, as we outreach in the communities, in low and moderate income communities within our district, we come back with information and we share that with community affairs and other arms of community development in identifying what role we can play as facilitators in the side of the consumer affairs, we help them by conducting interviews with community development leaders to understand the challenges, barriers, and how financial institutions are meeting the credit needs in those communities. So we help prepare that language for the performance context as consumer examiners begin to prepare for their bank CRA exams. So next slide, please, Jake. Thank you. What is our goals? Like Faith said, our overarching goal is to uplift low and moderate income communities and help make them resilient and help them prepare for social and economic upward mobility. We examine, like I said, we do community scans, we do outreach in the communities. And what does that entail? We examine how individuals and communities in low to moderate income neighborhoods systemically disenfranchised, and how they interact with the economy. And we identify disparities and challenges, just like I talked about in historically marginalized neighborhoods, and what challenges they face in benefiting from the larger economy. We also transform ways in which capital, so based on the understanding that we get, we then, our team, along with the other arms, the policy and analysis and research arms, provide some intentional transformational services within our communities. For the community engagement team, we have certain relationship building and training and education and investment connection program that we've catalyzed at the St. Louis Fed to help support these communities. And I'm going to use Jake.
Hey, Nilu, real quick, I'm getting some chop on your video too. So I don't know if you want to shut your video off as well.
Sure.
And I'm going to do the same.
Is this better?
Hey, we'll see. We'll keep rolling.
So next slide.
Yes.
So we talked about, Faith talked about the disruptions that have happened, that have taken place in low and moderate income communities as a result of the pandemic. And how has that impacted nonprofits? So as the community engagement arm, throughout this pandemic, we've been virtually out and about in communities, talking to our partners, talking to our stakeholders, and trying to understand what their challenges are and how we can be supportive in helping these challenges, or telling the stories and providing support that way. So what I think that the four top that we've heard are technology and service delivery challenges. Again, broadband has come up as one of the toppest or the biggest barriers in supporting low and moderate income communities, whether it's for educating our little kids, whether it's connecting for nonprofit leaders to connect with their stakeholders, to connect with their clients. That has become a top challenge. And given the fact, especially during the early times of the pandemic, that the service providers were not able to be on the ground in the neighborhoods that they serve, and not having access to their clients through any form of technology has been a big challenge for them. And again, the emergency needs of their clients has taken precedent over the other services and projects that they were conducting in these communities. I spoke to several of our nonprofits here in the St. Louis region, in East St. Louis, in Louisville, and that's been the #1 challenge is they've had to pivot their regular services and programs to meet the emergency needs of their clients. And that has kind of diverted their resources, because nonprofits are already thinned with resources. Then they had to further divert those resources for helping their clients meet more challenging needs. Of course, loss of development opportunities, affordable housing, revitalization and stabilization are key for uplifting low and moderate income communities and making them more resilient and helping them towards upward economic mobility. And that has been frozen as a result of this pandemic, as fundings have stopped. Again, resources have been diverted to other purposes in supporting clients. We are seeing a lot of disruptions in for renters in affordable homes, for mortgage payers who are living in affordable homes. So that again, and nonprofits are having to meet those challenges, as for many, rents and mortgages do form as earned income revenues for them. And at the same time, they have been challenged with helping their clients cope with income loss. And so it's just been, and so it makes sense for nonprofits to say that the recovery is going to take a long time, as it was alluded in the Main Street research report that Faith was just giving. Access to funds that support core operations, I already talked about that. So Jake, next slide. Thank you. How has the Federal Reserve system as a whole responded to some of the challenges that have been reported through our Main Street research and through the community outreach that all of our community development departments have done within the system? The Federal Reserve came up with the Main Street lending programs, and they have about 5 facilities within that program to support small businesses and nonprofits. How does this work? So you can find more information about this at Boston, at either the federalreserve.gov or at bostonfed.org. But as far as I know, with the nonprofit organizations, they're looking at long-standing organizations with strong infrastructures where they can apply for a loan with a eligible lender who is eligible to apply for these Main Street lending programs within the Federal Reserve service window. And that way they have access to revenues to support the work that they're doing. But the disclaimer here is that these nonprofits are usually very large nonprofits like hospitals, universities, and the cancer societies, just to name a few. So that's what the overall system has been supporting in helping the market stabilize within this pandemic. So how is the Community Reinvestment Act working during these times? And the Community Reinvestment Act and the regulations and the mandate have been pivoted to support some of the work that's already ongoing in the communities. So, and I'll talk more about some of the eligible activities under the CRA that banks will get credit for if they have invested or supported those activities during these times. And so how does CRA, again, affect the work that the community engagement team is doing at the Fed? As I mentioned earlier, we work very, very closely with the consumer examiners at the St. Louis Fed, where we are providing information regarding regarding credit challenges, barriers to credit and how financial institutions are being responsive or not within those areas. And to support this effort, the entire the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City in 2011 started the Investment Connection Program, which is a catalyst for bringing financial institutions to nonprofits and organizations that are either implementing or proposing community development projects to support the 4 eligible criteria that are within the CRA, so that there is a meaningful connection that happens between financial institutions and community development organizations. So we've been the federal, we've been St. Louis Fed was the second Federal Reserve Bank to implement this program, and I'm going to talk more about that in my following slides. Next slide, please, Jake. All right, so Community Reinvestment Act. I just have a few slides that kind of gives you just an overview of what the Community Reinvestment Act is and how that can be leveraged in supporting some of the work that the nonprofits are doing during this time and have been doing forever. And so next slide, please, Jake. So many of you probably already know the CRA, the Community Reinvestment Act, or the CRA, was enacted in 1977 to prevent redlining and to encourage depository institutions, any banks or financial institutions that are collecting deposits in your area, to help meet the credit needs of the residents operating or living in those areas, and in especially low to moderate income neighborhoods. However, they still have to be consistent with safe and sound banking operations. Next slide, please. So what is the purpose of CRA? Again, it requires the federal regulators of financial institutions assess the record of each bank or financial institutions, depository financial institutions, to see, you know, the communities they serve, what is the ratio of them getting deposits in those communities versus meeting the credit needs of those communities. And compliance is their compliance is based on their performance. The bank's compliance is based on their performance over a designated time period in meeting the credit needs of the communities in which their bank operates. And again, not all banks are examined the same way, because large banks versus intermediate to small banks, and small banks have certain CRA mandates that they have to follow, and that's how they're examined based on what they're required to do or they're mandated to do. And the community development activities that they're examined on falls within loans, investments, and services. And I'm going to talk more about that in the other slides. Next slide, please, Jake. Thank you. There are very many common myths about CRA, right? Again, being a development director, I had these myths about financial institutions where I would go to a bank and say, hey, you have a CRA mandate, you need to fund this project that I have, but never really delved down into, again, the size of the banks, what are they required, what relationships they have in the community. So never really delved into that. And some of the common myths about CRA that I thought would be helpful to share today is that we all think banks have CRA money. There is no CRA money, like the slide says, there is no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And as regulators, we really don't prescribe what banks need to do, what kind of products or services they need to provide. We just kind of make sure that they're meeting the credit needs of those communities. And how do we How do we understand the needs? Again, through community outreach, through community engagement. We then take that information and help examiners create a performance context to help examine these banks. So again, the myths are there are no CRA money. We cannot tell them what number of activities they need to do, number of dollars they need to devote, or any kind of activities that they undertake. We don't have a say in any of those. Next slide, please. Thank you. How does the CRA define CD? Like I said earlier, there are 4 community development activities under the CRA that the banks are examined, or it's not just about examination, but these are the 4 areas that banks typically partner with communities in supporting and meeting the barriers and challenges and credit needs of LMI individuals and communities. So they are affordable housing, and these are all have to be within within the LMI designated areas, within designated disaster areas. If your organization is within a promise zone, then that's a CRA slam dunk. So if any financial institution invests or lends or provides services in organizations that are within the promise zone area, that's designated a slam dunk in terms of meeting some of their CRA needs. However, the definition of low to moderate income individuals have to be very, very clear. So they support, the activities fall under affordable housing, community services, economic development, revitalization or stabilization of LMI geographies. Like I said, again, within underserved, distressed, or disaster areas that are designated by the government. Thank you. Next slide.
Anila, real quick, there's a question in the chat box. Sure. asking if the CRA is public information for the community.
Yes. So if you a CRA, but public evaluation. So when an examination is done, there is a FEIC, I can't remember the exact full form of it, but FEIC.gov, I think, should have public evaluations posted of all of your financial institutions in your areas. And you can kind of see the kinds of ratings they've received, some of the services they've provided in the communities. That information is public. So you can go and check in any of your financial institutions or partners. LMI actually stands for low and moderate income communities. So it's 50% or below average median income to 80% or below, again, I think between 50% or below is low, and 80%, I think it's 80% or below is moderate income, but that's how we defined the LMI. Next slide. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, so these are some of the CRA qualified activities. So like I said, community, what does community facilities and services mean? So community facilities is if a bank invests or provides grants or loans to build or rehab a community facility, whether it's a childcare facility, any kind of an educational facility, a health clinic, that can fall under community facilities. And social services. Services could be a bank sitting on your board or volunteering as to provide their financial skills in advancing a program that you have, or helping you write a loan application, helping you review a loan application. All of those services, if a financial institution partner provides that for you, that would be considered under services. Economic and workforce development, again, small businesses with 1 million or less revenue. If a bank invests in a program that's supporting small businesses with 1 million or less, can be will fall within a CRA eligible activity. Again, workforce development. If a nonprofit organization or a social service organization has a job training program, and if banks can come in and support that program, or can come in and provide some form of education, that also falls within that criteria. And again, affordable housing, if there is a loan financing or construction financing or any kind of other secondary mortgage loans, that can all fall within the CRA eligible criteria. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but these are some of the activities that can fall within the CRA qualified. These are more specific activities that can fall within CRA qualified, CRA eligible activities. One of the things that I do want to highlight is CDFIs. If you are a CDFI and you're working in low and moderate income communities in small business development or small business lending or affordable housing lending, if a bank invests in that CDFI, that's also a very strong CRA eligible activity from a bank's standpoint. Next slide, please. Again, this is activities continued. Again, job training, credit counseling, like I said, home ownership, home repair. You know, our consumer examiners kind of make us be clear that if you are a financial institution and you volunteer with the Habitat for Humanity in building a home, that would not be considered a CRA. It's just your own time of supporting your community. So that won't be considered a CRA activity. However, if you are on the board of a Habitat for Humanity or you're in a loan review committee, then that would fall within the CRA activity. Next slide, please. So again, tying this back into COVID-19, like I said earlier, you know, CRA had to, some of the regulations had to be pivoted to meet some of the community needs that have taken place due to COVID-19. And if a financial institution supports these or have supported these activities, then that would be considered under the CRA, which is emergency medical care. If they've supported in purchasing or distributing PPE equipment, that would fall under it. Purchase and like, again, that's what it means. Provision of emergency food supply, so supporting food banks or supporting community service organizations in helping with food supplies for LMI clients of those organizations, that then definitely can be included. Again, assisting, providing assistance to state, tribal, or any territorial local governments for emergency management and public health and safety education communication, that would be considered a CRA activity under the COVID-19 neighborhood and stabilization criteria. Next slide, please. Again, affordable housing, it's any kind of housing, promoting any activities, providing housing stability for low to moderate income renters, experiencing financial hardship. So if you're a financial institution and you're helping fund a product that is providing rental subsidy, then that could qualify. Again, as community engagement or outreach workers, we cannot say that this is a definite, because again, we don't know what the performance context or the larger context is. But if you do this activity, then this activity could qualify under a CRA COVID-19 affordable housing. Next slide, please. But you can find more information under fed.gov on the CRA COVID-19. And we also have articles that our consumer examiners have written that can provide some of that information. Any questions before I move into this section? Jake, do we have any questions?
Not seeing any more right now, so I think we can go ahead and keep moving.
Excellent. So like I mentioned earlier, investment connection programs. So next slide, please. The community engagement team has been engaged in providing investment connection program since 2017. However, as I said earlier, it was first started by the Kansas City Fed in 2011. And as of now, a total of 8 Federal Reserve banks with investment or have investment connection or similar programs. And they are St. Louis, Minneapolis, New York, Richmond, Cleveland, Philadelphia, and Dallas. I think St. Louis was, if I'm not mistaken, the second bank to implement this. And we've done this since 2017. And we've seen some really good success stories that I'm going to share in the following slides. Next slide, please, Jake. And again, the reason I'm sharing investment connection is we do consider this as another tool for helping. We've used this as a tool to leverage relationships between financial institutions, between nonprofit organizations who are serving low and moderate income communities and providing activities that fall within the community development sector and have the activities that are aligned with CRA. So we've been fostering through investment connection relationship between these organizations and financial institutions, as well as other funders, because we do believe that financial institutions are not the end of all. You know, they have certain mandates that they have to fill, as well as they have to do this in a very sound and safety manner. So we also encourage other funders, from foundations to philanthropic institutions and government entities who funds community development organizations to build strong connections so that through this program, the community development sector in your area can see a larger impact. So that's pretty much how the St. Louis Fed has defined our investment connection initiative. Next slide, please. So how does investment connection program in St. Louis look like? Like I said, outreach. Outreach is the biggest. You know, we want this process to be very participatory. We don't want to come and suggest something to a community, but we want to listen to the community. And so just for context purposes, we came to Evansville in January of 2020 to listen to the community, to have a conversation, to see, you know, to kind of hear about some of the challenges, barriers, and opportunities, and whether or not investment connection program would be a good fit. And then if the community says yes, then we do a CRA and investment connection training, which follows a very similar training manual that the presentation that I'm providing right now. And we did do this training for the Evansville community on August 11th with the support of the Promise Zone Convening. So thank you all again for that, for providing that platform for us. And then once we do the training, we then, again, we try to understand whether or not investment connection is still a good fit after learning about what the process entails. And if the community, we get positive feedback, then we issue a request for proposal for any nonprofit community development organization to submit a project or a proposal that is CRA aligned. And we review that, and then our examiners review that for CRA eligibility, and the selected organizations are then invited for a live/virtual investment connection event to pitch their idea, their project in a room full of financial institutions, foundations, private philanthropy, corporate philanthropy, and government entities, and to build a strong connection. Again, the Federal Reserve is not a grant-making organization, but again, we understand the needs and challenges, and we've created this tool to to help leverage strong connection building for a larger, more positive impact around community development in low and moderate income communities. So after that event, we do follow up with the nonprofit organizations, those that pitched, as well as we follow with the funders to make sure that that connection is taking place. And again, this is a circular, it's a cyclical process, and the outreach and engagement never stops even after that first round of investment connection process is over. Thank you, Jake. Next slide, please. And I'm going to wrap this up real quick. I know Faith has some more time to do this, and these are our numbers so far. We've about 130 organizations have responded to our RFPs, and we've hosted, let me count, 11 investment connection events throughout our Federal 8th District, Federal Reserve 8th District between 2017 and 2019. And so far, organizations have received investments of close to $2.5 million. But again, that's not just what we are counting. We are also counting really meaningful connections and what that has led for future opportunities. Next slide, please. So I wanted to share a few success stories, and I'll be fast. And we've had successes. Again, like I said, we're not just counting investments, we're also counting connections and what that has led for future opportunities in a community. But the two that really stand out and maybe kind of relatable, one is in St. Louis. We had a small faith-based CDC pitch a project, affordable housing project in one of the historic neighborhoods in St. Louis, but one of the most disenfranchised and neighborhoods. And it was a small faith-based organization. I hadn't heard of it. Nobody had really heard of it. And they pitched, and a CDFI, I talked about CDFI and how it's critical for CRA, approached this organization and approved close to, I think, about $400,000 in loans to build about 10 affordable housing in that neighborhood. And that CDFI had a board membership of financial institutions. I think they had about 12 bank members that voted in supporting this organization, and they came back for an additional project to advance the work that they were already doing, because they were able to leverage that $400,000 and now build an incubator for supporting small businesses in that area. And they pitched, and in late October, and then this year pandemic happened. However, they were able to secure funding again through a large bank. And the key point is that they were able to leverage their first loan in building a relationship with a larger bank for a larger impact. So that's why I kind of wanted to highlight that these kind of projects are highly possible within the investment connection. And then the other one is in Columbia, Missouri, which is a small size, probably the size of Evansville. We saw they were such a close-knit close-knit community, again, just like Evansville. Financial institutions, philanthropic entities, government entities were all working together. And when we came in with Investment Connection, it just expedited their process. The City of Columbia had pitched for a $1.2 million for financing a 10-home community, affordable homes under their community land trust. And one of the banks came in along with the Community Development Block Grant, matched by Community Development Block Grant, were able to come up with the development financing before the organization even pitched at the Investment Connection event. But I'm not saying this, these are the success stories. I mean, there have been challenges, but as our community engagement team, we work constantly to help those organizations continue to build that relationship. We've hosted funders roundtables in St. Louis and Memphis to continue that dialogue so that more organizations are being included in their in the investment plans, or are being included where they're building connections with these funders and leveraging that for higher impact. Next slide, please. So lessons learned, again, you know, if you are to partner with a financial institution, your mission and the mission of the financial institution needs to align very strongly. Again, you have to make sure that you are pitching, you understand your financial institution, the partner that you're engaging with, what kind of CRA activities that they have been engaged in, what kind of alignment they are looking for. And so be prepared as you're cultivating that relationship to align your mission and the mission of that particular financial institution. Again, you have to be very clear about what is low and moderate income communities, and how does your community fall within that. And if you're supporting, if your primary clients are small businesses, then you have to make sure that you highlight that these are businesses 1 million or less. So again, just making sure you have all the key points ready as you're cultivating that relationship with a financial institution. Next slide, please. This is one of the very consistent themes that we've heard from our funders, whether it's financial institutions or other funders, that for any funder to invest in your project or in your organization is to make sure that you have a strong infrastructure of documenting your work and disseminating that information. Provide you are capturing critical data and you are reporting that out to your funders, and you are meeting your evaluation goals as you have projected in your proposal. So you have to, when you're building or cultivating that relationship, you have to make sure that you are very focused on what the impact of this project is going to have in your client. Next slide, please. All right, that's all I have. Hopefully all of these are good tips for you as you're meeting with the funders in your afternoon session. Hopefully this can provide, hopefully this has prepared you better, and you also have a better understanding of how, as the Federal Reserve Bank, as the St. Louis Fed, we have been responding to COVID-19. I just wanted to provide one FYI. We have released the request for proposal for organizations in the Evansville MSA, or the Metropolitan Statistical Area, for the organizations to respond to, so that we can then host a live event later this fall. So again, I'm going to make a pitch. If you are a nonprofit organization serving the Evansville area and you have not received the request for proposal, I'm going to type my email here. Please let me know. But we do have that opportunity open in the Evansville area for this fall. So thank you all so much, and I'm going to stop here.
Thank you, Nilu. I think that was a really great presentation. A lot of good information. Faith, do you want to jump back into your presentation? Faith, I think you're on mute. If you're talking, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
It sounds a little choppy up front, but we can try it out and see we'll just try it out. Let me get your slides back up here, and then we'll see what we can do. While I'm switching slides here, there's a question in the box about email contact information, Nilu.
I'm going to be putting my email address in the chat. Thank you, Jake.
Great, thank you. All right. All right, Faith, do you want to you feel like you want to back up a few slides? You know, we've got till 30 after the hour for this session on the schedule. And it looks like the vast majority of the participants are still here. So it seems like we have plenty of time to back up a little bit if you want to, or we can just start from this point. It's up to you.
Okay, if you want to back up 2 slides.
Slide 5.
1 second. Slide 6.
Slide 6. Okay. So that's the one with the grid here.
Correct.
Okay. We're on it.
I apologize for the technical difficulties this morning. One other request, is there what, I'm on my phone, but I'm hearing an echo. Is there a way I can mute the presentation and just use my phone?
So if you're on the phone, you should, actually we haven't, I don't know if we've had this situation. You could try muting the computer mic and see if the phone still allows you to speak, but I'm not sure if that will intercept your phone signal or not. You can try it quick.
Faith, if you go ahead and mute your computer, you should still be able to hear everything through your phone. So you don't have to have your computer sound on. All the information, sound will come through the phone as well.
Oh, Faith, we were not hearing the echo on this end anyway, which is positive. So if we can't figure out the muting situation on your end, if you want to try it, we can still move forward. And again, I was not hearing a mute on my end, or an echo on my end. So Silas, I'm not able to unmute Faith anymore. So I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what's getting crossed up here with her call in.
Hold on, I'm trying to find her now.
Sure. Need some elevator music so we can have a little.
Give us 1 second as we work through these technical difficulties.
Need a little old school movie intermission pause here. Get yourself a beverage, refill your coffee quick.
Okay, Faith. She's not on mute. I still have her down as a...
I'm showing her as muted.
You are?
Yeah. And I can't, and I had the control to unmute before. Now I do not. I can't, when I press it, it doesn't unmute her. So Faith, I think you probably have to, I don't know if you just want to try your computer mic one more time and see if that works.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep. We can.
All right. Third time is a charm.
There we go. All right, let's try it. Let's keep rolling.
Okay. So the top 3 impacts rated as getting modestly worse were basic consumer needs at 34%. And when we talk about basic consumer needs, housing, food, utility payments, all of those are considered basic consumer needs. Number 2 was income loss. And number 1, business impacts. And what we mean by business impacts were small business closures, lack of access to capital, inability to make payroll or to pay rent. What we see as no change are education, health, private financial supports, public financial supports. Private financial supports would mean corporate donations. Public financial supports are government funding. Next slide, please. When asked how long do you expect it will take the people and communities you serve to return to the conditions they were experiencing before the impact of COVID-19, 46% of the respondents said longer than 12 months. Now keep in mind, this survey was taken in early June. So tomorrow, September 6th, the third fielding of this survey will be released, and those results will reflect conditions in October. So I'm really curious to see how the answer to this question might have shifted. When we think of what happened in July and August with the expiration of additional unemployment benefits and also the lifting of eviction moratoriums. Next slide, please. So when we asked about the disruption, the impact of the disruption COVID-19 is having on the entity you represent, we found that 30% said that it was a significant disruption, and only 19% said that they had the existing resources to operate another 3 to 6 months. Next slide, please. (42% reported an increase in the demand for services, while funding from donations, corporate donations, and foundations did not experience that same increase. What we've heard from our community engagement team is that based on feedback from nonprofits, they report that grants of as small as $5,000 from funders can make a significant difference in helping nonprofits to continue to operate for another 3 to 6 months. Next slide, please. So if you're interested in who actually participated in this survey, 45% of the respondents were nonprofits, 22% represented the private industry, and 13% represented government agencies. When looking at what type of areas do these organizations serve, 63% were rural, and then you have an even split between suburban and rural areas. And just one note, if you're wondering why some of these totals are over 100%, it's because respondents were asked to check all that apply. So if an organization is statewide, and they may serve urban as well as rural areas. They were asked to check both boxes. And then what issues do you work on? So once again, we have housing coming in at 44%, public and community services, 42%, and 41% primarily serving small businesses. Over 70% of you were a direct service provider, meaning you were actually dealing with the residents in LMI communities. Next slide, please. This map shows what states had the most robust participation. Virginia, Minnesota, and Florida had strong participation due to their states having robust nonprofit networks to push the survey out to respondents. If you would like to increase the participation rate of your state by engaging more nonprofit networks, you're encouraged to contact your Fed district's community development function. If you don't know what district you're in, feel free to contact me and I'll be happy to connect you to your Fed district. Next slide, please. Please don't forget that the third fielding of this survey will be available tomorrow. And you may access it by going to the CD page of any Fed district community development page. The next fielding will occur in October. As I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, the Fed is committed to continuing this survey until the end of the year. We hope that conditions will improve, but at that time, we will reassess whether it's necessary to continue this survey into 21. Thank you.
Thank you, Faith. I'm going to try turning my video back on for a sec. We're going to risk it. You know, Faith, I think that was really good survey information. And one of the questions, you know, I have, and other folks, please, we still have about 15 minutes or so left in the session. So feel free to throw out any questions at this point for Faith or Nilu. Faith, how do you recommend that folks actualize the information in the survey? Is there anything specific that you recommend in terms of utilizing it when you reach out to nonprofits, you know, local governments or any other partners or stakeholders?
Yeah, I would recommend for those nonprofits who are in need of funding that they reach out to potential funders and make the case that they need not large grants, but, you know, a grant of as small as $5,000 $5,000 could potentially really make a difference to their bottom line and being able to serve the needs of their residents or clients.
Great, thank you. I'm not seeing any questions, but I do have a couple of follow-ups, and this is really for Faith or Nilu, whichever or both of you have information that might be relevant. I know here in the North Minneapolis Promise Zone, there's been a recent attempt over the last couple of years to open up a Black-owned and led credit union. And I also saw recently that it sounds like the two largest Black-owned banks are merging into one very large bank. And I know community ownership is obviously a huge issue in terms of a lot of these low mod income communities really having ownership, of their communities, whether it's through home ownership, business ownership, lending, or other. And I'm just curious to know what the Federal Reserve Bank does, if anything, to support those minority-owned institutions.
Faith, you want to address that?
Nilu, I'll let you
Okay.
take that, because I think you're involved in the MDI.
Yes. So just an FYI, credit unions are not regulated by the Federal Reserve. However, we do recognize the importance of MDIs in community development. And so every year, I think for the past 5 years, again, I think it was first led by Kansas City Fed, we've been hosting the Minorities in Banking Forum, just to kind of, to promote the work that they're doing, and then to be also to kind of encourage leadership amongst minority bankers or minorities in the financial sector. So that conference is again coming up. It's a virtual conference this year, and it is, I think, the week of September 21st to the 25th. So that might be a good opportunity for anybody interested in attending to seek that out. There are other information on minority-owned depository institutions in the Federal Reserve website, thefederalreserve.gov, and there should be some research papers around those institutions. But because we do not regulate credit unions, we don't have a whole lot of maybe the direct answer to what you just asked, Jake. However, I just kind of still wanted to give you an FYI. We have had Federal Reserve credit unions, B, apply to investment connection programs, and B, also be a funder for nonprofit organizations who have applied through investment connection.
Oh, that's great to know. Thank you. Another question, Nilu, it sounds like this might be more up your alley. I know earlier this year, there was a fair amount of public comment that went into the changes to the CRA. And I'm just wondering, I have tried locally to encourage folks to feedback on federalregister.gov whenever there are any opportunities, whether it's whether it's HUD or CRA or any other agency or rules, regs, policy that comes up for people to feedback. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on those CRA changes and what folks can do to educate themselves and their community partners and stakeholders on any of those changes that might have impacts for them.
I do not believe that the Federal Reserve has come up with any definite changes or anything from the Federal Reserve side, but I think the best, I think I posted the ffiec.gov site. So check that out if you want to explore what your financial institutions in your areas are doing, or how they're being responsive, or to go and check that site out. Again, if it would also be a good opportunity to outreach with the FDIC and the OCC engagement managers in your area to see if they can provide any information regarding the modernization. I know for us, our bank was engaged in more of the outreach work, you know, in terms of understanding from the community what they feel should be a good, you know, they feel that CRA should look like, you know, in terms of modernization. But I'm not privy to any other information through our Federal Reserve System on the modernization.
Understood. Thanks for the feedback. I appreciate it. I just threw, doesn't sound like there are any other questions. I just threw into the chat box real quick, just the plug for the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, the Opportunity and Inclusive Growth Institute. You know, pre-COVID, they were having, it seemed like it was a quarterly topical, and the Opportunity and Inclusive Growth Institute really brings together a lot of academics and other professionals from a whole bunch of different fields across the country. There's some pretty impressive credentials in that group. And I've been, again, fortunate to just be a few blocks physically here from the Minneapolis Federal Reserve Bank, our HUD headquarters downtown here in Minneapolis. And I believe that they also record or live stream those events. And so I would encourage folks to check that out, sign up for I think they have a magazine and an email newsletter, and presumably some notifications on future events if those are accessible either live or recorded after the fact. But I've been incredibly impressed with the different topics they've had around housing, economic development, and then things I have no understanding of, like monetary policy, where I just kind of sit there and smile and nod because it's not my area of expertise whatsoever. Faith and Nilu, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you muddling through. I know that the technology issues can be a challenge, and I want to turn it over here to Julius Austin to kind of close us out and prep us for the rest of the week for the National Coalition of Promise Zones convening sessions.
All right, thank you, Jake. I'm going to turn it over to Silas actually to close us out, but I just wanted to thank Nilu and Faith for their great presentation. And I wanted to thank all the participants for joining this presentation, but I would like to highly encourage you to join the afternoon session that will take place in about 2.5 hours. It will build off of this presentation because you will hear from a promise zone that has partnered with the Federal Reserve, but then furthermore with the FDIC around the CRA. And so the promise zone was able to partner with the FDIC to engage with the banks around their CRA giving, to educate them about promise zones. And then that subsequently transpired into a kind of pioneering opportunity for banks to collaborate intentionally to fund promise zone area nonprofits through a RFP process, which was spoken about during this presentation. And you will be able to hear respectively from the FDIC, promise zone, and a bank funder about their roles and their experience in doing this partnership. So you'll be able to hear how everything that was spoken about today actually went into action to fund nonprofits in the promise zone. And with that being said, I would like to turn it over to Silas to close us out.
All right, everybody, thank you for participating. We had a number of individuals on this morning, and thank you for staying as we went through technical difficulties. As we mentioned, we do have a few more workshops and presentations that will go on through this week. please feel free to log on. For those who have not or did not register, we want to let you know that the same login link that you use will work for the other ones as well. So if you did not register, just use the same link during those time frames, and you can be able to log on to the other presentations this week. Again, we thank you and appreciate the presenters and our moderator for getting us, working with us through this workshop and presentation. We look forward to connecting again. Thank you all, and we'll hopefully see you here in a couple of hours.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, Faith and Nilu, again. Appreciate it.